For better or worse, there are a few things that I come to expect when reviewing a budget running shoe. But this is a $110 Reebok Floatride Energy 5, and it defies all expectations. Yo, what's going on everybody? My name is Kofuzi and I'm a non-elite runner who reviews shoes here on YouTube, and today I'm going to tell you all about the Reebok Floatride Energy 5. But before I give you my thoughts on this shoe, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that Reebok sent me for the purpose of review. However, they're not paying me to make this video or to use this shoe, and they're not going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Reebok Floatride Energy 5. First, let's talk about some specs. There's actually been a lot of changes this year, which is one thing that I don't typically expect when it comes to budget running shoes. They kind of like figure out what they want to make and they make that over and over and over again. They might slap a new number on it from time to time, but to save money, there aren't a lot of changes. But this year, we're seeing quite a few. The first and most obvious one to me is that there's now this new extra piece of plastic down at the bottom of the shoe. Reebok is calling it their mid-foot X-plate. Now, I've seen a lot of plastic type of elements like this before in shoes, and sometimes they're intended or at least marketed to us as being designed for stability, so that way when your foot hits the ground, the shoe isn't twisting quite so much. And other times they're advertised as kind of like a poor man's carbon fiber plate, where they're supposed to give some extra propulsion. As you bend that piece of plastic, it wants to naturally bend back and then it snaps forward for you. For this one, for the midfoot X plate, Reebok is telling us that it is for torsional stability, and they put it mainly underneath the arch of the foot. You can kind of see through it, see some of the gaps in the rubber that's here on the outsole, and that's going to be mainly so that it doesn't twist too much. The other big change for version 5 of the Reebok Floatride Energy is that they've changed the midsole. Now, as far as I understand, the actual compound of the Floatride Energy foam that Reebok is using here hasn't changed, but they have changed the amount and the width of the footprint that you're landing on in this shoe. So there's a wider base, which is again going to help with stability, just like the midfoot X plate is going to help with that as well. And they've also made the stack height taller, which is going to give you a little bit more cushion to land on to make that ride just a little bit more comfortable. Now, I don't have exact stack height information on this shoe, but I do know that is an 8mm drop. Moving to the outsole, I think we have pretty much the same type of rubber in a slightly updated pattern. Moving to the up, there is a dual layer mesh that is nice and breathable. There's a gusseted tongue that is light on the padding, just how I like it. And then there's a lot more structure in the back of the heel. I'm not saying that it's much more rigid of a heel. It's still a little bit of flexibility in there, but it's just a little bit more structure in terms of the padding that's in the back of the shoe, and the Achilles flare has gotten a little bit more flared and extended. And overall, I feel like I like what they did with the padding in the back. I generally don't love it when shoes get too puffy in terms of foam that they're putting around the ankle, because especially in the summertime, it tends to become a sweat collector. But what they've done here is they've kind of like almost like upholstered the back of this heel cup, and it ends up being a very plush and comfortable experience. Altogether, this shoe comes in at a total weight of 9.4 ounces and 266 grams. All right, now that we've talked about what the specs are on the shoe, let's talk about what it was like to actually run in it. I think to better understand this shoe, we have to compare to kind of like what I was expecting going into it and some of the preconceived notions that I had looking at this $110 shoes. Typically, when I'm looking at a budget daily trainer, what I am anticipating I'm going to get is a fit that is pretty okay, a ride that is pretty okay, and durability that is above average compared to other running shoes. Because I think that the target buyer for these kinds of budget shoes are people that are returning to running, or maybe just getting into running and aren't wanting to buy a whole bunch of different kinds of running shoes. This may be the first running shoe they bought in a while, and they don't know if they really want to spend the full amount compared to kind of what all the other daily trainers are costing on the market. So budget is a consideration, and also like mass appeal is a consideration as well. So you're not gonna get super crazy designs, and you're also not gonna get super crazy features that I tend to like, which is like extreme squishiness, extreme bounciness in the shoe. So I feel like a lot of times the brands are trying to design a shoe that's not gonna annoy any one particular group of runner over the other. And so you get a shoe that's no one really loves, but no one also really hates. But I think that this one is a little bit different. It pushes beyond the mold, and it pushes definitely beyond what prior versions of this shoe have done. I was really pleasantly surprised that the front of the shoe, the forefoot area, was giving me a nice amount of cushion, absorbing the impact from every foot strike that I hit on the road. And then as I'm pushing off and I'm lifting my foot up, I felt like the foam was decompressing really nicely in a way that did not feel like a budget shoe to me. And I feel like that's kind of like the best compliment that I can give the shoe, is that it punches way above its weight class when it comes to performance versus the price. At all points when I've been reviewing the shoe, it did not feel like a budget shoe to me at all in any dimension. So I feel like it's really quite a successful shoe. I do really feel like this is a shoe that's going to be very accessible to a wide variety of runners, from seasoned marathoners to people who are coming back to the sport or coming to the sport for the first time. As far as the fit on the upper goes, I felt like it felt true to size for me. So the same running shoe size that I use across all my running shoes was the right size for me to use here. The one thing that I will note though is that when the shoe came to me, it was very tightly cinched down. So I just spent a lot of time, at least the first couple runs, making sure that I loosened everything up all the way down through the bottom of the shoe, so that way my foot had enough space. And the weird quirk is that when I loosened the shoe to a point that I felt was really comfortable to wear for running, I felt like there wasn't enough shoelace left for me to do a double knot. So it's kind of like this little baby bow right at the top of the shoe, but that's the only one little quirk that I've had with the shoe. Now let's get to some summary points and talk about some other shoes that can complement the Floatride, or we could compare against. First, let's talk about who and what this shoe is best for. I think this shoe is best for any runner who is looking for a reliable daily trainer at a fantastic price. I'm not saying that it's good for a budget shoe. I'm saying it's a really good shoe that also happens to fit in a lot of people's budgets. Now let's talk about some pairing options. And I suspect for a lot of you who are looking at this shoe, it's probably the one and only running shoe that you're gonna buy, and that's totally fine. You're probably looking at it for something that you can run in a couple of times a week, maybe a few times a week, and then also do some walking, wearing it casually, maybe standing around a little bit at work in the shoe. And I think this is gonna be a fine option for you guys. But if you are starting to build that running shoe rotation, here are a couple other shoes that I think can complement well the Reebok Floatride Energy 5 if you really like kind of the ride dynamics and what it's providing to you underfoot. I think for a race day option, I think that the Saucony Endorphin Pro is going to be a really great complement to the Floatride Energy 5. It's a shoe that I've been recommending a whole lot of times over the last year, and it also happens to be at full list price, a little bit cheaper than some of the competition. The other shoe that I think can pair well, I'm not saying you need to get all three of these shoes, but the other shoe that I think can pair well as like a workout and a race day shoe compared to the Floatride Energy 5 is going to be coming out of left field a little bit for a lot of you. It's going to be the Topo Cyclone 2. Now there's a couple of interesting features about this shoe. It has a foot-shaped toe box. There's a lot more space here for your toes to move around, and it has that same type of race day foam like we saw in the Endorphin Pro, but there's no plate in this one. But again, I feel like there's going to be a very similar ride between these two shoes, and they're even the same color, so it'd make a nice little set here in your closet. But this is definitely more workout and race day oriented. It's also priced not as high as race day shoes because it doesn't have that carbon element. So if you're looking for a shoe that you can do your first couple of races in and you want something a little bit speedier, I feel like that's a really fun place to go and take a look. All right, now let's talk about the buying guide for this shoe. The shoe has been out for a couple of months now, so it's still going to be at the full 110 retail price, at least from Reebok and from the bigger running shoe online retailers. I am starting to see it at some other retails in select sizes at some prices that are under $100. So maybe you can get lucky and find a pair in your size for that cheaper price. And I feel like that is a fantastic price. I absolutely love it. These days, kind of like the normal price for daily trainers is about $130 to $140. $120 used to be the standard, but we're not really seeing that so much these days, and the prices have definitely crept up quite a bit over the last couple of years. But if you're looking at this shoe, I think there's a couple other shoes that I think you should also consider. The first one that I'm going to talk about is kind of the obvious choice for me, and that's the New Balance Propel version 4. This is another kind of budget daily trainer coming in at $110 for the full retail price. This one has quite a bit of technology, and it has 2 layers of fuel cell foam, which is actually the racing foam that New Balance uses both in its racing shoes and for its higher end training shoes as well. There's also a plate element sandwiched between the 2 layers of the foam here too, so you're getting quite a bit of technology. This shoe is another one of those budget shoes that really surprised me, and I feel like if you're looking at the one, you should be looking at the other. The other shoe that I think you can also look at is not in the budget category at all, and it's a shoe that I've been talking about like pretty much every single review for this year. It's the Adizero SL. It's not my favorite shoe, but I feel like it's the easiest for me to recommend to the most amount of people. It's got 2 different types of foam in it. They're daily training foam plus a little insert that you can kind of see in the forefoot of their racing foam. So you're getting a little bit more of a premium experience in this shoe. It's a daily training shoe that retails for $120, so just $10 more than the budget priced Floatride Energy 5. But the pricing on this shoe is quite wacky when it comes to Adidas. The shoe changes price like basically on a weekly basis. Sometimes it's $120, sometimes it's $96, then it'll go back to $120. And right now, at least as the filming of this video, it was on sale for $84. So at that price, it's quite a bit cheaper than the Floatride Energy 5, and I feel like it's a value that's really tough to beat. But at the $120 price, I feel like it's really quite close. So those are my thoughts on the Reebok Floatride Energy 5. If you have any questions about this shoe or any of the other shoes that I talked about today, feel free to put them in the comments down below, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Monday through Friday right here on YouTube. I'd love to see you guys over there in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?